Okay, for this assignment, you have to write a descriptive argument. And descriptive arguments answer the question, is it a problem? Oftentimes, we make all sorts of assumptions and take actions to solve something that is not really a problem. So remember that descriptive arguments answer the questions, is it? So for this particular practice or think it through, I want you to consider something that we're all very familiar with, swing sets. They're on parks, they're in playgrounds at schools. Many people, if you're lucky, had them in your backyard. And yet, swing sets do provide injuries to children. For example, you can see here that a 4-year-old boy died in a swing set accident at an Airbnb rental. So let's assume that we have a group of parents who read about this incident and they get very agitated and they want to address the issue. Are swing sets a threat to child safety? These agitated parents want to get some legislation on the books to make it prohibited to have swing sets in playgrounds or backyards or whatever. And you can see that if you do some research that there are a number of articles that do talk about the dangers of swing sets and other play equipment. You'll notice that down here the swing sets or the dangers associated with swing sets are head injuries that can lead to death. So it doesn't seem to be unlikely that swing sets are a danger. The question is, however, are swing sets a threat? So what is the difference between something that is dangerous and something that is a threat? Because they are different words and different terms. So in order to be able to address the issue, are swing sets a threat to child safety? I have to look up the definition of threat and understand precisely what a threat is. And if I look at Merriam-Webster, it says that a threat is a person or a thing likely to cause damage or danger. Now, the word that you have to focus on is likely. Likely means that it is going to happen a significant number of times. And obviously, likely is an abstract word. It is an opinion word. What one person considers likely, another person might consider not likely at all. So the number of times that it has to happen. And interestingly enough, your definition of likely may change with the situation. So if you like it, if you want something to happen and it only happens 3 times out of 10, it's not likely. If you don't want something to happen and it happens 3 times out of 10, then you have a tendency to emotionally think it's likely. So once again, we have to determine whether or not something is likely to happen. And in order to do that, we have to answer 3 questions. So in order to determine if something is a threat, you need to ask yourself 3 questions. Now, the first question is it probable that a child will be hurt on the swing set? And probable is not possible. Anything is possible. Few things are probable. Probable is in excess of 50% certainly. More likely probable would be 80 to 90%. So you are 80 to 90% certain that a child will be hurt on a swing set. That, if we put that into numbers, we might say that if 10 children played on a swing set, in excess of 5 of those children would be hurt over a period of time. More likely, 8 of the 10 children would be hurt on that swing set. You need to answer the question, can there be things put into place that will reduce the chance that a child will be hurt on a swing set? For instance, if you find out through your research that children are getting hurt because of the metal chains that hold the swings, then that's an easy fix. Yes, you can take off those chains and put on some sort of cord type or rope type supports, or you can put those plastic tubes over the chains to keep children from getting their fingers pinched. And thirdly, will getting rid of swing sets significantly reduce the chance that a child will be hurt while playing? Now, it's really important that you answer these questions for yourself separately, because let's look at the answers. The first answer might be, well, yeah, it's probable that a child will be hurt on a swing set, but we could reduce that to almost nothing if we put 2 simple regulations into place. And then if we put those things into place and we drop the number to 2%, then 3 is taken care of. Because obviously getting rid of them is not going to reduce it. All we need to do is to put the plastic tubes over the chains or something. So in other words, the answer to all 3 may not be yes, they may not be no. You may have a variety, and that's when you have to actually then weigh all of the pros and cons to be able to ask your issue. Now let's look at this in practice. Let's assume that I ask you to write a paragraph answering the questions, are swing sets a threat to child safety? And let's look at how Artie and Artia, answer that particular issue. Artie's conclusion to the issue, are swing sets a threat to child safety, is that swing sets are not a threat to child safety. And his argument has to be made up of reasons. So he has 3 supporting reasons. Notice how he uses the questions to create the reasons. If you have your questions, then your reasoning becomes very clear. His first reason is that it is unlikely that a child will be seriously hurt on a swing set. The second reason is that simple precautions can be put into place to reduce the chance of serious injury to almost nothing. And the third reason is getting rid of swing sets will only encourage children to play on other, more dangerous playground equipment. So, in other words, getting rid of swing sets will not reduce likelihood of injury, it will actually increase it by doing this. This is Artie's argument. Let's go down and take a look at Artia's argument. Artia argues that swing sets are a threat to child safety. Her reasoning is that children are being seriously hurt on swing sets in alarming numbers. Precautions needed to reduce the chance of serious injury are expensive and difficult to achieve. And getting rid of swing sets will encourage children to play on other, less dangerous playground equipment. Okay, so let's take a look at the first reason. Now, notice that both of them have an argument. They have a conclusion. They have reasons that address the conclusion. But we know that a good argument has to have supporting evidence. That if you can't support your reasons with factual data or testimony, credible testimony, then you really don't have an argument. You're just really kind of spouting off what you think. What you have is a glib argument, and we don't write glib arguments in this class. So let's take it one step further and look how they would each develop their reason. Let's look at the first question. Is it probable that a child will be hurt on a swing set? Artie says that it's unlikely that a child will be seriously hurt on a swing set. And Artia says that children are being seriously hurt on swing sets in alarming numbers. And they both go to do their research. And they go to, on Google, they find that according to the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, and notice that's hyperlinked, so they could have gone to the original source to check the data, each year more than 200,000 children under the age of 15 visit emergency rooms for treatment of swing set related injuries. And they both use this same piece of evidence. So we have a statistic here, and it's a fact. It is simply a fact. It can't be debated. You can go to the original data and find that it is true. This happened, I believe, in 2020, so it's relatively new data. But Artie says that this means that they aren't dangerous or not a threat, and Artia says that they are. So obviously, just putting that piece of evidence there is not sufficient. You're going to need to develop that evidence with an explanation to put it into context. Because if you don't, your reader doesn't understand why it supports either point, right? So let's look at how they blend this into a paragraph using explanations. Let's look at Artie's first. Artie writes that swing sets are not a threat to child safety. First of all, while it is true that some children are hurt on swing sets, injury is unlikely. The law firm Colling, Gilbert, Wright, and Carter report that according to the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, each year more than 200,000 children under the age of 15 visit emergency rooms for treatment of swing set related injuries. Now, Artie goes a little bit further, however. He does a little bit of extra research because he goes, 200,000, that's a lot of kids. But, you know, I wonder how many kids there actually are in the United States. And not only how many children are in the United States, but how many of those 200 children have gone back to the emergency room more than one time for swing set related injuries. I personally had a son who was a bit of a daredevil, and we spent a significant amount of time in the emergency room for the same sorts of injuries. So he looks that up and he adds on. However, the Statista Research Department, 2021, reports that in 2020 there were about 23.6 million children in the country aged 0 to 5 years. Now, that's just 0 to 5 years. That doesn't even take into consideration the from 5 to 15. That's a lot of children. Now, granted that some of those children wouldn't be on swing sets, but still, that's a lot of children. So putting that together, when you think that there are 23.6 million children in the country, then 200,000 doesn't seem like a very big number. So then he begins to explain, and notice that he starts with a definition of what it means to be a threat. While swing sets may be dangerous, in order to be considered a threat, the number of children injured would have to be more than 50%. I might say 80%, someone else may say 90%, but he's being cautious and saying 50%. And it's not so important that we agree with him, it's more important that we understand what his definition is. Statistically, only about 9% of children will have to go to the hospital due to swing set injury. Swing sets are not a threat. Now let's jump over and take a look at what Artia says. Swing sets are a threat to child safety. First of all, children are being hurt on swing sets in alarming numbers, and she gives the CDC statistic. Okay. Now she might have done additional research, and she may find that that number varies slightly. It may be a little bit higher, it may be a little bit lower. But if the number is pretty consistent with 200,000, giving me 5 different statistics that say the same thing is unnecessary. That one is fine. The U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention is a credible source. However, she doesn't think in terms of children everywhere. She thinks in terms of that number 200,000. And notice that she starts out with her definition. In order to be considered a threat, the likelihood of injury must be significant. Now notice that what she doesn't do is tell me what significant is. I know that she thinks that 200,000 is significant, but I might not consider it significant, nor may you consider it significant. And then she continues with her explanation. 200,000 children a year is a number that indicates that when children play on swing sets, they run a significant risk of injury. Therefore, swing sets are a threat to child safety. Now, notice that both of them follow the C pattern. And notice that both of them have the pattern of defining the term threat and providing an explanation of how that evidence meets that threat. For Artia, 200,000 is a significant number. Anytime you hear 200,000, you need to set up and pay attention because that is scary. The difference between the two is in the reasonableness of the argument. In other words, Artia can say whatever she wants to say, and I will understand it, but I won't necessarily agree that it's reasonable. And that is where arguments differ, because 200,000 may seem like a scary number, but it's not a scary number if you consider the number of children playing on swing sets every single day. Now, granted that Artie didn't point out that of the 23.6 million, how many million of them are actually playing on swing sets. So a better definition would be how many a better statistic there would be how many children in the U.S. play on swing sets every day. Not how many are there, but how many play on swing sets. However, that being said, even though there is some weakness to his reasoning is substantially better than Artia's. Now, then the next paragraph that would follow, can this number be lessened with some simple precautions? Notice that Artie says that it can. Artia says that no, it can't, that any precautions that we take are going to be unfeasible because people won't do them and they're going to be very significant to employ. So once again, both people would have to prove that. And we might use the same evidence that this could be changed simply by doing X. And then Artie would have to explain that it's very reasonable that people would do this and it would be simple to employ. Artia would have to explain that nobody would do it, and even if they would, it would be cost prohibitive. This is how you explain that something is a problem or it isn't. Now, this is a thinking exercise. You have to get out of your emotions and move into your thoughts. Notice when you look at all of these headlines and this particular icon and so forth, emotionally, you're all of a sudden going, oh my gosh, look at this. They're a danger to my children. Children are sacred. And emotionally, you want to react. But what I'm asking you to do is to think logically. And this is an important skill to develop, because I had a friend who came over to my house and she has young children, and she was talking about the fact that she was planning on putting her children, homeschooling her children, because she was afraid of gun safety and them being shot in the elementary school. And she lives in Scottsdale. Not to say that it wouldn't happen in Scottsdale, certainly could. However, I asked her, how many schools do you think there are in the United States? She gave me a round number, which was quite large. And I said, how many children do you think go to those schools? And once again, she gave me a number that was quite large. And I said, how many school shootings do we have in a year? Now, maybe they cluster a little bit, but how many school shootings? And she gave me a number, 1 a year, which I think is still high, but anyway, let's say 1 a year. And how many children die in those school shootings? And she goes, well, maybe as many as 20. Okay, so let's say 20 children in the entire United States, out of all of those children, die once a year. Is that too many? Absolutely. Is that tragic? Absolutely. Horrific, even. But are our children at humongous risk of going to elementary schools every day because of gun safety or because of a threat? And have you weighed the threat versus all of the negatives that a child might experience by being homeschooled? I don't know the answer to that question, and I can't answer that question for her. But what I can ask her to do is to step out of her biases and fear, her emotions, and to look at the situation logically. You're going to be asked to do this on this upcoming paragraph. If you have any questions, contact me or work with Donna. We're happy to help. Good luck.